So the sun has a magnetic field, and that magnetic field normally is oriented like any bar magnet with a north pole and a south pole. And after about 11 years, that switches. So the north pole becomes the south pole, and the south pole becomes the north pole.
So what will it mean in terms for us? Will we notice any differences?
Well, the switch of the polarity itself we won't particularly notice, but what we do notice is this polarity happens at a time when the sun is at a maximum solar activity. And we do notice when there's lots of solar activity going on, as there is for the sort of few years around this happening. So the most obvious, the most visible impact on Earth is stronger aurorae, both aurora borealis and aurora australis, the northern and southern lights, which are caused by energetic particles from the sun, from this active sun, that interact with the Earth's upper atmosphere. And when they do that, they light up, and that's what we see as the northern and southern lights.
Is there also an impact in terms of satellites and communication? Will we perhaps getting a few glitches there?
Yes, perhaps a few, yes. So these same particles, when they interact with satellites, they cause these are moving charged particles, which is otherwise known as a current. And when currents impact satellites, they can affect the electrical systems of the satellite, and they can cause disruptions to satellite. In some cases, they can shorten the lifetimes of satellites, and they can also affect the electrical grid on the Earth. There have been in the past, there have been some power outages that have been caused by events like this associated with the sun.
So you mentioned it happens every 11 years, so we've had sort of time to get ready for it with satellites and different things. Do we know exactly when it will happen?
Well, it's actually already started. I said that the sun acts like a bar magnet, and that's mostly true, but it's actually a collection of many, many, many bar magnets that are eddies in the gas that makes up the sun. And in the northern half of the sun, it's actually already flipped. It flipped in July or so. So the northern half is already flipped, and what's going to happen in the next few weeks, we don't know exactly when, is the southern half will flip as well. So then the sun will go back to being one coherent bar magnet.
So do we know why this particular process seems to take place? I mean, is it associated with some kind of power surge within the sun? What's happening there?
It's not associated with a power surge, and I'll say we don't know exactly, but we have some ideas. So the sun's magnetic field is caused by moving gases in the sun. The technical term for this is a dynamo. But the sun rotates. When the Earth rotates, it rotates like a ball. Everything on the Earth rotates at the same speed. But the sun is a gas, so things rotate at different speeds. The equator rotates faster than the poles. And that moves around the field, and that tangles up the field and changes the orientation and causes a fairly messy disturbance in the sun's magnetic field. And it's the reorganization of that field that is somehow what causes it. But again, the exact details are still something that we're working on.
We were just seeing some images there of quite a lot of activity happening in the sun. Just can you describe what we were just seeing there?
Yeah, so we were seeing several things. We were seeing some loops in the atmosphere of the sun, and those loops are actually gas that is following magnetic fields. So magnetic fields the magnetism is organized in field lines, and the charged particles in the sun follow those field lines. So when there's lots of magnetic activity, these they're called coronal loops get pumped up into the upper atmosphere of the sun.
And is that what sends flares off into
the
atmosphere?
And that's related to the process. When those lines break, the flares can be kicked off. We also saw some sunspots, which are darker spots in the sun when we look at it with a proper filter, but with light that we see with our eyes. And those dark spots in the sun are areas that are actually just a little bit cooler because of this magnetic activity. And when we're at lots of magnetic activity, as we are right now, there are lots of sunspots.
We've seen a couple of spacewalks recently.
Yes,
Does that have any impacts at all?
In principle, these charged particles could be dangerous to astronauts, just like they're dangerous to satellites. Fortunately, all of the spacewalks that we have, the International Space Station is low enough in Earth orbit that it's pretty well protected by the Earth's own magnetic field. So these charged particles don't pose much danger to our current astronauts. They did pose some danger to the Apollo missions, to missions to the moon, because they're far enough away from Earth that they're outside of the Earth's magnetic field.